Reagan, and I am currently a state senator from District 23. And I'm also a candidate for Secretary of State. I'm going to apologize early because we are, as I mentioned, I'm in the state Senate, and we are in special session right now. You may have heard that the governor called a special session to deal with the Child Protective Services issue. And special session, as luck would have it, started today. And I do have to, after I'm done speaking, I'm going to try to stay as long as I can. But the reason why I'm apologizing is I am going to have to scoot out of here to get back up to Phoenix because I need to report back to the Capitol tomorrow morning. I didn't want to cancel on you, though, because I was looking forward to coming back down to Yuma. I do enjoy coming down here. This has been about my 5th or 6th trip to Yuma, and so I was looking forward to it. And when we were called into special session, I decided, what the heck, I'm gonna drive down there and what I call turn and burn, turn around and go right back. So it is good to see everybody again. I'm very excited to be running for Secretary of State. Over the past 12 years, I have had the honor and privilege of serving at your state capitol, and I have found 2 areas of law that I've really enjoyed working on. And those 2 areas are commerce and business type issues and election issues. When I served in the House, I was in the House of Representatives for 8 years. I was the chair of the Commerce Committee. I was one of the young, I think they're locked out. Somebody wants to quick before they get away. I did that the first time I was here, so they're on board. I served in the, when I was in the House, I served as the chair of the Commerce Committee. And our very own Jim Crothers was in the House with me. He was just finishing up his term. I was one of the youngest chairs of that committee that the state ever had. It's a very powerful committee because if you think about it, almost everything that the legislature does, every bill that they deal with, somehow touches commerce, has some sort of economic component to it. So as a result, I studied a wide range of bills and a lot of issues. Then when I went over to the Senate, Senate President Biggs made me the chair of a new committee the state had never had before, and it's the Elections Committee. That was where I got really interested in Yuma County because the folks in Yuma, as you know, have been talking about some issues in the election arena and some of the things you have seen here happening that what you call the great state of Maricopa, what didn't listen to you for a long time. Some of the irregularities you were seeing in this part of the state in regards to elections. And you were mentioning it, but a lot of people weren't necessarily taking it seriously, and they should have been. And I started to get involved when we had this new elections committee because I had a learning curve of about this steep. And I did the first thing that any good chairwoman would do, and that is I started reaching out across the state to all the different county reporters and the county elections folks. One of the first people I reached out to was your very own Robin. She started telling me about some of the concerns and issues that they've had down in Yuma County. So I came down here, it's been almost 2 years now ago, and started learning about some of the things that they've seen. The incident with the post office box in San Luis, where you have multiple people registered to one address. My first thought was, wow, they must have either really small houses in San Luis or really big post office boxes, but you have almost 30 people registered to one post office box in San Luis. Things that were never investigated, problems that you have seen, that you were reporting back up to your state capitol that were completely overlooked and not investigated. Why did it come to the attention of elections officials across the state? Well, because those problems started to migrate, and we're now starting to see them statewide. Yavapai County, we have photographs of people pulling up to their county reporter up there with trunk loads full of ballots. Well, that's nothing new to your county reporter here. She's already seen that. We have loopholes in our law that needed to be fixed. So as the new elections chairwoman in the Senate, I took these issues on head on. And it wasn't pleasant, it wasn't easy. Capitol for 12 years. Never had I felt like I needed to have security. Even when I was the Commerce Chair and going up against unions and holding the minimum wage bill and doing things that were pretty meaty, tough issues, until I started tackling the elections issues. And the more that some of these groups came after me, and the more money they spent busing people in from different states to fight what I was doing, and yes, they did that, and it got very ugly. That's when I needed security, just to walk from the Senate to the House to testify on some of my bills. But I knew I was onto something. There are some really good people running for Secretary of State. I don't badmouth any of the candidates, because we have some good choices, and choices are good. Republicans are about free market. I don't agree with the way that the other party does it, where they sit in the back room and decide who's going to run in primaries. I like our system. Competition and choices are great. So we do have good choices in the Secretary of State's race. But what I'm traveling around the state talking to people about is the fact that you have somebody running for Secretary of State who's already been on the ground fighting for these issues, who already has the experience working with the county reporters across the state. The Secretary of State's job is twofold. It's managing the state's business filings and a very administrative task, and it's managing and overseeing the state's election systems. Those are the exact two areas in the legislature that I have worked on the last 12 years. I like to say that everything I've done in the last 12 years has tailored me to do a really, really excellent job as Secretary of State. It's a job that the elections bills that I pushed for the last couple of years, I got passed. And the governor signed them. And it was exciting because a lot of them, the genesis of those bills came from Yuma. It was unfortunate because we had some groups come in and pay a lot of money to overturn our new laws before they even took effect. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And that should scare you. The amount of money that they spent to overturn our new laws before they even got to take effect. Laws like you can't bring 1,000 ballots into your polling place. That's still a law. You can still do that. That will still be able to happen in the 2014 elections. My goal is to get those things cleaned up before the really big elections in 2016, which we know is our presidential elections. I can do that. I certainly can do that as Secretary of State. I know how to work the legislature. I've been doing it. I have a lot of experience, and I want to keep over the next 3 months, or what did early ballots go out in 65 days. Can you believe that? 65 days. I want to keep traveling the state so that people get to know me and see that I do have a lot of experience, and more important, the passion to be able to do the job of Secretary of State and to do it very, very well for you. So again, my name is Michelle Reagan. It is wonderful to be back down in Yuma tonight. I'm going to stay as long as I can tonight to try to get to mingle with you, but if you do see me sneak out, it's only because I want to return to work tomorrow at the Capitol and get the CPS thing tied up. So thank you again for having me, and it's great to see everybody.
Before you run off, are there any questions?
Yes, I have questions, if anybody has any. Yeah.
I have a question. When Jan Brewer ran for Secretary of State the first time, I took her down to San Luis, drove her around, showed her South County. After she was elected, I met with her a couple of times, and I explained the issue with the early ballots, post office, everything that you know. So she knew about it since then. Why was this allowed to go on and get it as big as it is now? I don't want to ask you a question that she should ask, but obviously it's not her, because I've talked to many people, and everybody would just turn away and they would say, well, South County, San Luis, we don't want to hear about it, it's their problem. But it's the seed that actually grew throughout the state, and it was allowed.
You're absolutely correct that the methods were perfected in San Luis.
Yes.
It was an operation and a ring that was perfected, and it was allowed. And you're correct also, I can't speak for anybody else. I can say that in campaigns, it is, and this is your job as voters, candidates of all stripes are going to give, you know, we're all going to fix everything. And that's why it is so important for me to tell you, these are issues that I already have been working on. It's something I'm passionate about and have been working on in the legislature when nobody told me that I had to or should do, or nobody showed it to me. I found it on my own and said, this is ridiculous. We are the only state in the country that allows mass ballot collection. And when I saw that, it would have been easy for me to turn a blind eye, because my last 18 months have not been fun with the groups that have come after me.
What groups are those?
Well, the first one was a group called Arizonans for Working Families. And they sent out, in a non-election year, which is very rare, they sent out I brought it to your women's group a couple of months ago, a full-page flyer. If anyone who does campaigns knows how expensive those are. Full color, double-sided, with a picture of an elderly woman on the front, and she was in a wheelchair, and it said, the kindness that allowed her to cast her ballot would make her a felon and it listed my bills, if these bills were allowed to pass. And you turn it over and there's this really ugly picture of me that they pulled from some file, where I'm like, and call Senator Reagan, and this was when these bills were first introduced. And this piece of mail went out into, as far as we could tell, 11 different districts across our state, and it went to Republican households. So they used it, and it was confusing. Yeah, it was brilliant. And they were trying to confuse Republicans, so then our office was inundated with, as well as Republican senators' offices, were inundated with Republican voters calling their offices, asking them to kill the bill. So what I was then faced with was my Republican colleagues coming and saying, oh, my people in Sun City hate your bills, I don't know that I can vote for them. But what made me nervous was the amount of money a mailing like that costs. So I knew early on, I just ticked somebody off big. And that's the interesting thing about these things with good sounding names. Arizonans for Working Families. It took us a while to trace the money, but it was a group of different unions who funded that.
One other thing before, one other thing is, 15 years. I've been working on this for 50 years. I know how it's done, I've seen it. I brought down Ken Bennett, he helped out. I know who the players are, and I know how they perfection. Okay. The sad thing about it is that there are elected Republicans that are in them, and they are just as guilty. They're in bed for the Democrats. That's why it got to be as big as it is. Elected Republicans.
It wouldn't surprise me for the simple fact that I would love to talk to you. In fact, what I would really like to do is win first and then talk to you when those same people couldn't go after me, because I have had a little bit of tango with some of those folks. But that's for discussion for
I have some evidence that
a few months from now.
Yeah, I'll have some evidence that you would find very interesting that I gave to the FBI.
Did you get my card?
Yes, I have.
I heard about there, and there was a thing, that a newspaper article that Ken Bennett did down here that said real Arizonans cast their own ballots.
Right.
I've heard a little bit about that. I'd love to follow up with you, but please let me hopefully be successful first.
Okay.
Because they don't want me to win. Because they know I'm really good at my job. Not the Republicans, the Democratic union groups.
Michelle, I have to ask you a question. If we're fortunate and I put my money up front today to hope that you are going to be fortunate to be elected, our Secretary of State. Knowing that, and knowing where you've been and what you bring to that office, what do you feel you bring to the office if we were to lose the governor and you were to move, since you're number 2, move to that position? What can you bring to that position?
Well, Jim asks a good question, something you don't like to think about, but God forbid, if someone should become an accidental governor, it would be the Secretary of State. I like to point out that I'm not running for governor. I am running to go to the 7th floor of the executive branch, not the 9th. But what I would bring to the governor's office would be invaluable if I should be called upon, and that is experience. Legislative and business experience. I didn't mention that before I ran for office, I worked in our family-owned business for over a decade. We owned a sign manufacturing company, built that from the ground up with my parents, and it was very successful, and we ended up selling it. And that is actually why I ran for office, was to be a voice for small business prior to meeting you. So I bring a very unique combination of public sector and private sector experience. But if you look at every governor that has become an accidental governor, meaning he or she didn't wake up one day thinking that they were going to be governor, the thing that got them through it and the thing that made them successful was their legislative experience. It was knowing how to maneuver the halls of the Capitol, because the majority of that job is working with the legislature. And I don't know how anybody would do that job without knowing how to deal with the legislature. In fact, one of the people who is supporting me is former Governor Jane Hall. And she's she is an inspiration to me because she so closely follows what I'm trying to do. She started in the legislature. She was the first female Speaker of the House. She was the first female elected Republican Secretary of State. And then when she was called on to become governor, when she actually really liked the Secretary of State job and wanted to stay there. When she had to ascend to the governor's office, it was her legislative experience, knowing where to go to get things done, knowing the way government worked, knowing how to do a budget. She had done several state budgets, even knowing what the budget of Arizona is. How many billions of dollars is it? How many departments are there? How many employees? Knowing who the players were and how to work within the different chambers and how to get a bill passed and how to get amendments onto things. That was what saved her and what made her a successful governor. So that would be what I would draw on and rely on. That would be huge and invaluable. I don't want to take up any more of your time from your next speaker. So.
Yes, thank you very much. I was about to.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming down and speaking with us tonight. Our next speaker is Chris Becker, and he's representing Mayor Smith, who's running for governor.
Thank you.
And I will let him take it away.